And welcome to Odds on Premier League match day 14. What a match day after the Man City Liverpool. We have Arsenal on top. This weekend we have Newcastle, Man United, both frustrated in the Champions League for different reasons. We also have Man City, Tottenham. Tom, were you slightly disappointed by the City Liverpool game?
Maybe. I mean, I think that we're not in the old Mourinho era where the big games were always just awful. I think we all remember Red Monday and just how appalling that game was with no shots between United and Liverpool. So it's not as bad as the old days, but not as good as the best Guardiola-Klopp matchups there's been.
Well, we have already some comments thanking you about the last bets, the ACCA and the safe bet that came through in your previous video. Interesting weekend of fixtures for Nabil. So, guys, remember, as always, leave your comments, press the like, subscribe. Let's go on with the show. And of course, check our welcome offer with 1xBet, exclusive one, and get up to 120 euros or dollars using our promo code. Tom, first game is Arsenal Wolves. We see Arsenal on Wednesday smashing Lens. They are top of the Champions League. They are top of the Premier League. So I think Arteta should be very, very happy after this game. Should be an easy one, I guess you will tell me. They have Aston Villa, Brighton, and Liverpool. Tough schedule until the end of the year.
They do. This is probably the last game they're going to be massive favourites to win. The odds reflect that. It's not worth going Arsenal straight win here because they have been terrific this season. You know, smash Lens, as you mentioned, in the Champions League in midweek. That was an easy run for the Gunners, and their home form in the Premier League this season has been terrific, as has their away form. It's why they're top of the league going into this weekend. At home, 7 games, 5 victories, 2 draws. One of those draws was the North London derby against Tottenham, which is always a bit of an anomaly in terms of how the season goes for both of those two teams. It doesn't really matter because they go into that game and they seem to elevate themselves. So, you know, home form terrific for Arsenal. And I think that it's a tough game, this, because Wolves have been criminally underestimated this season, I think by me at the start of the campaign, and I think by most people across the campaign. And Gary O'Neill, they've got a very good, young, astute manager who, for me, was manager of the year last year, getting that ragtag Bournemouth safe in the Premier League last year. And he's also done something at Wolves that looked severely lacking in the first few weeks of the season, and that's get goals from them. He's managed to get, in 13 Premier League games, 18 goals. And if it wasn't for VAR, and it seems all officials just hating Wolverhampton Wanderers, they might have more goals, they might have more points. Robbed again by VAR for at least one of the penalties in the game against Fulham on Monday Night Football. And if it wasn't for the interjections of VAR in that game, we'd have won our bet. So that was very annoying. The only thing I'd look at here in terms of Wolverhampton Wanderers is them to score a goal. You look at their most recent run of games. They have scored in each of their last 5 matches, some defeats, some losses, a couple of goals in many of those games. So they are a team that can score goals. Still no Pedro Neto, but so impressed with the improvements of Mateus Cunha and Hwang Hee-chan, one or two others. Really impressive Wolves going forward. Defensively, a bit suspect, so expect goals at both ends. Now, that does discount Arsenal's brilliant defensive record, 10 goals conceded across the entire campaign. 7 of those, though, are at home. So they have been more susceptible to conceding at home than away. So I picked out here Arsenal win and both teams to score for the reasons I've mentioned, 3.25. I'm always trying to find you above the 2-1 or 3.0 threshold, and that's what I found here. And I think that's really, really nice for Arsenal to win and both teams to score. The form guide suggests it. The other thing I'm going to put in here is a penalty in the match. That comes at 2.5. I think that'll drift up to around 3 as we get to the weekend. And the reason I say that is VAR hate Wolverhampton Wanderers. They hate them. They can't stand them. They don't like the fact that it's not old gold anymore, the kit. It's more orange. They don't like it. They hate Steve Bull. They hate Slade. They hate all of it. Anything that comes from Wolverhampton, they hate them. So they'll probably find a way. I'm being facetious. Don't sue us. But I just feel like the luck is against Wolves, and so there'll be a penalty to Arsenal in this game. It's a bit of a fun bet. Go for the other one, but I can just see it happening.
VAR also hates Newcastle. We will talk about it a bit later. For Malam, this is also both teams to score. Let's see if Arsenal smashed Wolves as they smash Lens in the Champions League. Next game is Brentford Luton Town. Luton Town, very competitive. Perhaps they have a chance to stay in the Premier League. Right now, they are 4 points away from Sheffield United. Of course, thanks the point deduction of Everton, but they beat Crystal Palace. They got themselves 2 victories already in the season. Brentford, Tom, mid-table, lost to Arsenal and Liverpool. I guess it's time for them to win.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, this, because you mentioned Luton. They do not get smashed. They lose a lot of games, but they do not get smashed. You look at recent defeats, 1-0, 1-2. Several times they've got 1-1 draws this season. Their victory last weekend against Palace, which I didn't see coming, I've got to admit, by 2-1. They get beaten or they lose or they win now, but narrowly. So every game they are in it, and that's absolutely commendable. And I think with Everton's 10-point deduction, they will now fancy their chances of staying up more than ever before. In terms of Brentford, they're an interesting team. They're such a difficult team to play against. Now, I think maybe Brentford might be the blueprint for Luton in a lot of ways. The disappointing thing for Brentford this year has been the home form. Just 2 victories in the 7 games they have played, 3 draws in that time. And the loss against Everton, I'm sure, will still be smarting as well from a few weeks ago. The Arsenal one last weekend, exactly as we predicted, victory to 0. Would have been frustrating as well, having got so deep into the game without conceding. So, look, I'm going to go for Brentford here, but I think you've got to look at the close game markets. And the close game markets are under 3.5 goals, for example, under 2.5 goals, for example. But what I do like, as you know, is group bets. I think group bets are really handy because they give you a selection of likely scorelines and they just push your odds of winning slightly higher than just going team to win. Brentford to win here is not worth your time. So there's 2 sets of group bets I really like. The second one is a bit more daring, and the first one's a bit more likely. The first one is Brentford to win 1-0, 2-0, or 2-1 in a group bet at 2.75. I think that's quite nice and very likely to come in. Again, Luton do not lose by huge margins, and Brentford rarely win by huge margins. But if you look at Brentford's 2 victories this season at home, one was a 3-2 win against West Ham, and one was a 3-0 victory. So if you take 3-0, 3-1, or 3-2, 2 scorelines they've achieved this season, that brings you in at 5. That I really, really like. It's not my top tip, but it certainly is one I'm considering, and I'll make a decision on that as we get closer to the game. I'd also look out here for who's going to be the goal scorer. They don't have many, Brentford. Brian Mbeumo to score the first goal in this game is 5. Now, I don't usually pick out a first goal scorer, but I can't really see who else is going to do it. So Mbeumo at 5 is worth a little sprinkle of your money as well.
Well, Tom, let's move on to the worst game we can see in the Premier League, probably in the year. Probably if you want to torture someone, put this game. I'm talking about Burnley, Sheffield United. There is a high chance they'll meet the next season in the Championship. Right now we have Burnley with only 4 points, bottom of the table. Sheffield, 5 points, only 1 victory. And what am I missing to see Burnley this favorite to win a football game?
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? It's really odd. I was trying to work this out last night when I was going through these odds. They've lost 6 in a row at home. They are the worst team to start a season at home in the history of association football in the top flight. Not just the Premier League, association football, 150 years of history. This doesn't happen to teams in the top flight because usually they are a bit competitive. Even Luton Town have picked up some points. They pushed us a bit last week. I went for West Ham to win and both teams to score, and it took 86 minutes for West Ham to score. So I was a little bit nervous about it, but they just keep finding ways to lose, Burnley. And that's what teams who get relegated do. They find ways to lose. They outplayed West Ham for the entirety of the game last week and lost the match. In terms of Sheffield United, there have been some improvements in recent weeks. I know they were walloped by Bournemouth last week, as we predicted, but they do have a better spirit than maybe the results have suggested. They just don't have good enough players. Ollie McBurney and Cameron Archer and Ollie Norwood, these guys, they're good championship players. And that's the issue with both of these two teams. It doesn't matter about coaching. It doesn't matter about home advantage. They haven't got good enough players. And the record for the start of the season means they are not going to make it. What do you do here? Well, you don't take Burnley to win 1.87. That'd be a wild and mad thing to do. But I do think Burnley are probably going to win more likely than not. Why? Because Sheffield United are the worst away team in the Premier League this season. Just 1 point from their 6 games played. That was the draw at Brighton last time out. Brighton went down to 10, and Brighton also had played Europa a few days before, and teams struggle a couple of days after a Europa League game. So I've gone for a group bet again because I need to bring up this 1.87. That's pitiful. 1-0, 2-0, or 2-1. Nervy victory for Burnley brings you in at 2.88. So again, close to the threshold, slightly under, but not a great deal of confidence in Burnley at all for obvious reasons. The other thing I'll say here, it doesn't scream it, but I can see it. Draw at 3.75. Brings up to 3.85 actually this morning. So a slight change from the last time I saw that. So that tells you something too. I think the draw is going to bring you to about 4 by the time we get to the weekend, and it'll drop before kickoff. So look at around 1 o'clock UK time for a draw. It'll be about 4 then, and I'll probably be taking that.
Yes, this is the classic both teams to lose, which lead us to a draw. Nabil is going for a goalless draw or a 1-1. I think there is a lot of wisdom in that comment. Next game, this is a tough one. The bookies tell us that there will be another draw here. Nottingham Forest, Everton, very level odds. Everton, they should not lose this game because when they see the table and they see themselves 5 points away from salvation, you might get a little bit nervous because they lost also to Man United 3-0 at home, and they have to fight against teams like Nottingham Forest, lost to Brighton, lost to West Ham, only one victory in the last 9 games. So Nottingham Forest, they are not in the best position right now in the league.
This one is really, really fascinating because Everton, with their point deduction, sit second bottom. And they go into this game as ever so slight favourites. So normally I try and pick something out for you here, but the bookies are ahead of me on this particular one because everyone fancies Everton to win this match. And I think Everton are going to stay up in the Premier League comfortably this year, even with their 10-point deduction. You look at Nottingham Forest. There's some things to like about Forest. Alanga, Gibbs-White, Murillo at centre-half. There's some good things about them. But as a unit, as a collective, does it quite work? I don't know whether they have a cohesive team. And you look at the home form as well. 2 victories across the opening 6, fine. But it's only 1 win in 5, 4 draws and a loss in the last game in there to Brighton. And Brighton were down to 10 men last week as well. So I wonder if there's a crisis of confidence going on at Nottingham Forest with the manager and the players. And Everton's away form this year, if they didn't have the 10-point deduction, they'd be in the top half. They're actually, surprisingly, not doing too badly. And 3 away wins, 2 in the last 3 and 3 in the last 4. It's pretty impressive. Nobody wins at Brentford. They did. Not many win at West Ham. They did. Not many score 3 against Crystal Palace. They did. That's pretty impressive for a record for Everton this season. And so I think you've got to take that into account. And I think you've got to back Everton to win. At 2.7, I quite like it. I will just take it. That's the tip. Take Everton to win at 2.7. Take your money and run. If you want to make some more money out of it, you could go both teams to score. Why both teams to score? Because that has happened in 3 of Everton's away victories, bar the one at West Ham United. So I think there's a chance that Forest might score the opening goal and get weaker as the game goes on, as Everton gets stronger. Plus, Dominic Calvert-Lewin being fit makes a massive difference to Everton. And I haven't picked the odds out for these yet because they come in a little bit later. But Everton to win and score from a corner If you double that up, I'd say that'll bring you in around 4. And Everton to win and have over 5+ corners. Over 5+ corners was 1.88 this morning. Look, not great, but you combine that with the 2.7 to win. That brings it over the 2-1 threshold, and it's worth taking that as well.
All right, people have different opinions actually in this game. I like the double chance for Everton, Madan Stelinas, Malam. We can see here Forest, Asian handicap 0. Everton should score. They need the points. Desperate, Felipe Stelinas. So a lot of different opinions. Next game. Oh, this is a very good one. Very good one. Newcastle, Man United, both frustrated for the European games. Newcastle because they were absolutely robbed in the Parc des Princes. They should have won that game, and the VAR, well, we all know how they pointed out the penalty spot for a hand that is an absolute joke. And from the betting perspective, Tom, Newcastle, they are so strong at home, even with the absentees, that 2.0 looks like a gift, 0.1. And then Man United, I was watching the game yesterday, and it looked like a basketball game against Galatasaray at one point. It was like from court to court.
It was so anti the Manchester United we have seen in recent weeks. I think it's a clear step change that there's a lot of frustration with Man United. They're unwatchable. And I think they're maybe trying to be more aggressive, more confident, more swaggering in the way they play, because games like Luton and Fulham, which they won, despite the fact they won, there was a week of headlines saying how bad Man United were. So I do think that's a conscious tactic from Erik ten Hag to try and be a bit more expansive. But of course, that opens up his defense to how weak it is. You know, it isn't a strong top 4, top 3, top 2 title winning backline. And if you expose it by pushing people forward, you can see 3 goals against Galatasaray. So it's an interesting one. Look, Newcastle were robbed in midweek. And the other thing worth noting for them, as everyone knows really at this point, the ongoing narrative, the amount of players missing at this point. Let's run through who's still out for Newcastle. No Tonali, no Murphy, no Byrne, Wilson out, no Anderson, no Botman, no Barnes, no Longstaff, no Willock, no Manquillo, no Target. Now that's 3 or 4 starters, 3 or 4 subs, and 3 or 4 useful reserves. At the moment, to not have any of that, and even though Lewis Miley at 17 in midfield has been extraordinarily good for someone who's only just made his top flight debut, you can't ask that to continue. In the end, you need your senior players to return, and they're not going to return to this game. So really tricky, this. Really, really tricky to predict who's going to win. I go to the form, and I go to how Newcastle have done at home this season, and it's only that loss against Liverpool across the 7 games this campaign. You look at how they've done in big games this season, and I'm thinking about the Arsenal game at home, and I'm thinking about the Chelsea game as well, even though the scoreline in the end was really, really big for Newcastle by 4-1. The game itself was actually quite tight for a good 60, 70 minutes before Chelsea crumbled. So I think it's going to be quite a tight game, actually. I don't see it being expansive and thrilling like the Galatasaray match. I think it's going to be a bit more like the PSG game we saw a couple of days ago, bar, hopefully, the diabolical penalty decision. So I think low scoring here, but I'm going with something a bit off. I'm going to go almost identical to the Arsenal game a few weeks ago. I think Newcastle win this game, but they win it without conceding, because I don't quite see how Manchester United are going to score a goal against Newcastle United. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but I think United will go back to being a bit more negative, as we've seen in the Premier League in recent weeks. Try and take their chance when it comes. I don't think this will be 5-5. I think it'll be maybe even first goal wins. Newcastle to win to nil, 3.75. That feels ludicrous to me. Them to win 1-0 or 2-0. That feels very likely for something that long. So I'm going to take that. But I also think tight all the way to half-time. That brings me 0-0 at half-time at 3.25. If you want to go draw at half-time and then Newcastle to win, which again, I can see in my mind's eye, that's 5. Draw at half-time, no goals, tight and taut until the half-time whistle. In the second half, Newcastle nick 1 and nick the game, which is the Arsenal match. I can see it. That's a 5. I'm taking it.
Have you checked the market for Onana own goal, for instance?
Yes, it's evens. It's definitely going to happen, so don't do it.
Ziyech's second goal, I think it could count as Onana's own goal, to be honest. It was like a joke. Like,
Oh,
I'm not a Man United fan, so for me, it's a joke, to be honest. But if you're a Man United fan, you have to be very, very pissed, very, very angry.
he's so good in midfield, though, Edu. He's such a good midfielder. Play him instead of
Onana.
Casemiro.
Yeah, he has a great game with his feet, but a goalkeeper in my times was to save goals and shots like the one Ziyech did. Poor Man United, poor Onana. I like that bet. Tom Viper and Viper is telling us 1-0 for Newcastle. Felipe is telling us Newcastle 7 games at home, 6 victories, only 1 defeat. The one against Liverpool. Well, on Sunday, 5 more games. Remember that we have midweek games in the Premier League the following week. And the first game is Bournemouth, Aston Villa. Right now, Bournemouth 7 points away from the relegation spots, getting points, beating the rivals they should beat to stay in the division. For instance, Sheffield United. They also beat Newcastle, which was a surprise. But now they have Aston Villa. Someone was telling us the previous week that they were bad away from home, and they are not. They beat Tottenham. You said it in our video. The thing is that at home they are so good that perhaps we might think that they are weak away, but they are a great football team, Tom, with Watkins scoring 4 victories in the last 5 games. The numbers are just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the away form table can be a bit skewing at times because so many of the teams are brilliant away from home, but 3 away victories in 7 is really decent for Aston Villa. In the last 5 away games, just 2 defeats. Again, really decent. They aren't going to win every single away game because they're not Man City, but they are going to be able to beat the lesser teams in the Premier League, as they've shown us multiple times this campaign. So, it's a really tricky one, this. Bournemouth have won their last 2 at home, but one of them was against that beleaguered Newcastle United, where they were just so short of players. Not only were they unable to change things, also the players that were on the field had never really worked together before, and it was really telling in that particular match. So Bournemouth met Newcastle at the exact right time. I still think Bournemouth are more likely to be relegated than not, even with Everton's point deduction. I think it's going to be them or probably Luton in the battle for 17th and 18th come the end of this season. Though, it's worth saying last weekend they were very impressive against poor old Sheffield United. Tavernier played well. As you know, I think Dominic Solanke is a really top-level centre-forward. There's some good things about Bournemouth, but I think defensively weak. The midfield is middling, and the star players are kind of 1 in 3 guys. So I'm still not going to back them here, and I don't really like the odds for Bournemouth. That's not enough for me to back them to win against anyone. I know it's decent at 3.63, but I want maybe 5 to start backing Bournemouth to win anything. And I really like Villa. I think everyone likes Villa. The home form is spectacular, as you've mentioned. The away form is good. And Ollie Watkins, what a season he is having. 7 goals and 5 assists this season for Ollie Watkins. Up there with brilliant players, Son, Salah, Haaland, in that competition for assists and goals combined. Jarrod Bowen in that list as well, I should mention, the top 5 who have got the double whammy in the Premier League this season. So how do you make money out of Aston Villa win? Well, look, Villa to win is not too bad here, but you double it with Ollie Watkins to score. That brings you in at the 2-1 threshold, 3 on your decimals, which I really, really like. So Watkins to score and Villa to win brings it in at 3. I also like Diaby, scores less, but insert Diaby instead of Watkins. It's still the same odds, but it again brings you to that threshold. And if you feel really daring here, look at the handicap market. I think Villa are going to be able to score at least 2 goals. I can't see Bournemouth scoring in this match against Villa. A -1 handicap brings you in up towards 3. A -2 handicap will bring you in over that threshold. So look at the handicap market, assess your confidence levels, but Villa are going to win this to make some money. You need one other element to it, and it'll be worthwhile.
Villa should win. Rick is telling us nothing to analyze when you see Villa. You play over 2.5 goals. Philosophia is telling us there are strange things this season. No? You see Emery, you see goals. You see Simeone and Atletico de Madrid, you see goals. Even Benitez is playing good football, even if he's not getting the results with Celta. There are odd things happening with the defensive managers, even kind of No, Mourinho, not that much, but still sometimes we see goals in Roma's games. Well, Aston Villa, very entertaining. Clash of Spanish managers, by the way, this one, Bournemouth. Aston Villa, next game, Chelsea, Brighton, with Chelsea back to the defeating path against Newcastle. 4-1, it looked like they turned the corner, but no, another defeat. And now Brighton could be a tricky guest in Stamford Bridge. No defeats in 6 since they visited Man City. This could be an upset for Chelsea, especially seeing the odds for Brighton. Ansu Fati injured, by the way.
I can't believe the odds here. I'm really staggered by the odds here. Look, I think one element of the odds being like this is that Brighton are playing on Thursday night in the Europa League, and because of that, they have struggled on the Sunday. That's happened multiple times. It's happened to a lot of teams this season, but Brighton seem to have struggled post-European football more than most. And the Ansu Fati thing is, it's absolutely very interesting for Brighton. A long list of injuries for them, which we don't talk about so much because maybe we expect less from them, but there's no Estupinian, there's no Lamptey, there's no Fati, there's no Welbeck, there's no Enciso. Dahoud, I think, is still suspended. Yes, he is. Adam Webster is injured. Lewis Dunk is suspended. James Milner is out. There's doubts about Karam Mitoma, though he should be okay. So, on and on it goes. Solly March continues to be out, and yet they keep on picking up results. I, again, have gone to being done with Chelsea on the other side of things. Last week, I thought they would do it against Newcastle. Couldn't have been more wrong. It was maybe my worst bet of the season. The one last week, and I got drawn in by the odds. So I just can't bet on Chelsea to win again. Look, I think here you've got to avoid Chelsea because the Chelsea market 1.76 is useless. Would anyone be confident of a particular scoreline or goal scorer when it comes to Chelsea? I don't think you can. So I'm going to take Brighton. Look at these odds for Brighton to win. It's extraordinary. 4.7 for Brighton just to win a game like this. You consider the home record of Chelsea this season is pretty pitiful. 1 victory at home in the Premier League this season, 3 draws and 3 defeats. Brighton away from home, won their last game, drew the one before that, 3 victories in total. There's nothing in the form guide that tells you Chelsea are going to win this game. There's nothing in the form guide that tells you Chelsea are favourites to this degree, and they're not worth your money. So if you choose to bet on this game, go Brighton to win. 4.7 that's gone to now. That was 4.2 when I looked at it earlier on. That might get to 5 the way things are going. Obviously, people are lumping on Chelsea right now, which is skewing the market, so take it. If you look at additional bets here, which, by the way, you don't need, but you could take Brighton and under 3.5 goals in the match. I think it'll be quite tight. That brings you in an extraordinary 6.5. That's 2-1 Brighton. That's 2-0 Brighton. That's a ridiculous thing to be offering people this morning, so I'd be looking at that. I also wouldn't discount the draw because Brighton at the moment are drawing more games after European matches than winning. A lot of those games are finishing 1-1. Draw and under 2.5 goals, a 1-1 draw, basically, brings you in at 6, which I like as well. All sorts of money to be made on Brighton, and the reason I'm going for it is that I just wouldn't put my hard-earned money on Chelsea to do anything right now.
Well, Felipe is going for Chelsea. I think Chelsea are winning because Brighton will be tired. Both teams to score. Tricky game, this one. For Chelsea, I agree that the odds are very, very good. Brighton and both teams to score. Insane value for Nabil. Next game, difficult to find value here, I'm sure. Liverpool Fulham, I think, was a great result. They won 1 in the Etihad. We know Man City's record at home, so grabbing a point, not losing there, especially after conceding the first, is great. For Liverpool, they have now kind of an easy schedule. They have Fulham, Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, so they can be on top of the table in around 2 weeks. First, of course, they have to beat Fulham, but I guess they will.
Yeah, look, I won't waste too much time here. I'm not going to look at Fulham to win this game. 1 victory away from home this season, 2 points in the last 5 away games. Still struggling to score goals unless VAR gives them dodgy penalties. So don't bet on Fulham. Not worth your time. Liverpool 6 games, 6 wins at home. Look at the scorelines. 3-0, 3-0, 2-0, 3-1, 3-0. So what's it going to be? It's going to be 3-0, basically. And find ways to make money out of a 3-0 scoreline. A -2 handicap brings you in at 2.75. That's a conservative bet, but it's certainly worth taking because the form guide suggests it. Liverpool's goal-scoring exploit suggests it. A -3 handicap, which looks really juicy at 5. I quite like that. I think Liverpool might give Fulham a bit of a strumping here. You can also keep it conservative. Look at the 3-0 scorelines. Liverpool to win to 0. Always a nice bet. It's slightly under what I would like at 2.25, but fine ways Liverpool to win. This is your Asian handicap game this weekend. Go as confident as you can because it's going to be a big win.
All right, let's not waste a lot of time in this one. Liverpool Asian handicap -2 as well for Gersau, both teams to score. No, Liverpool to win and over 1.5 goals. Salah to score or assist. Another ideas. Next game, West Ham Crystal Palace. West Ham to win here is 2.0. They are not far from the European spots right now after back-to-back victories against Burnley, against Forest. So now they are in the upper part of the standings, exactly the opposite for Crystal Palace now. Bad record, 4 defeats in the last 5.
Yeah, but I wouldn't touch West Ham with your barge pole here because West Ham are one of those people who just find ways to disappoint. They find ways to let you down. And last week, they nearly did that against Burnley, though eventually, in the end, they did deliver it. West Ham are a tricky one this season because I do feel like, again, like a few of the teams this year, they are maybe struggling a bit with the European game followed by league game combination. It's their 3rd year of doing it, but what they do is they play a very low intensity game to try and get through all these matches. It's why West Ham maybe have the least amount of injuries of any team in the league because they play such a low intensity style, which, you know, has delivered a lot of results over the last couple of years. But you do note it when they start losing, they up the intensity and look quite a good team. When they're not losing, they are losing a game, or when it's level, it's so low intensity, it can be frustrating to watch. They're such a depressing team to watch, and it's not necessary with some of the talent they have. It's a really strong squad. It's a top 8, top 7 squad, and they may well finish there, but it's going to be tough to watch at times. Home form, not too bad. 3 victories across the season, but they have beaten the poor teams. The other win was against Chelsea, along with Sheffield United and Nottingham Forest, but they were very bad at that moment in time. And they have struggled, plus conceding a lot of goals, West Ham, which is surprising. For Crystal Palace, you know, you mentioned their run recently, and they've lost Eze to injury as well last weekend. Check Doucouré being out, who was the best player on the pitch in this game last season, by the way. It is a big blow for them, but I'm not taking West Ham at 2.06. I'm not taking it. Plus, Crystal Palace have a really good record recently against West Ham. Beat them twice last season at Selhurst, and this game at London Stadium. They left it late to have that Elise late winner. So the draw, it screams draw at 3.72. It screams low scoring draw. 3.72 draw, take it. You could take 0-0 here at 11 on your decimals. That's about 12 to 1. I really like that. Final score 0-0. I don't go exact scores normally, but I really like that. Find ways to make 0-0 work. You'll make some money here. I think if you're going to pick a winner, you go with Crystal Palace. Their straight odds of Palace just to win is worth taking. That's 4, so I'd take that. The only West Ham bet I like here is Thomas Souček to score. 4 games, 4 goals before the European game on Thursday, 2 in West Ham games, 2 in Czech Republic games. To score from a header, Thomas Souček is 10. That's 9 to 1. That's worth your time if you're picking out a West Ham bet. To score any time, it's 5. I'll take that as well. But I'd avoid West Ham here.
Well, last time West Ham beat Crystal Palace in their ground was in 2018. So Crystal Palace have a very good record. Actually, I had a deja vu when you told me this about you saying the same thing last season. And Crystal Palace won in November as well against West Ham away. So let's see what happens. Palace double chance. Karim is telling us Johannes Palace to win. Well, Tom, either you are convincing the people or the people think like you. Could be both ways. And talking about good records, let's talk about the last game, Man City Tottenham. Tottenham is kind of the kryptonite of Pep Guardiola's Man City, getting great results against Man City. The problem, as you tipped last week, is that the Spurs are going down the road, down the defeat path with 3 consecutive Defeats against Aston Villa, Wolves, and Chelsea, and visiting Man City usually is not the best medicine to take care of your illness.
You know, I've covered this league for like 11 years now. And in this league, at times, you got to grind out results. You got to forget aesthetic. You've got to forget legacy. You've got to forget philosophy, all that stuff that when you're winning is really important. When you win more than you lose, the style then becomes important. When you're losing every week, you just got to win. And at the moment, I watched the Tottenham game last week and I saw the lineup and I immediately thought Villa are going to win this because they played the old way, but with lesser players. And Villa just picked him off time and time and time again. They had 1 goal disallowed. Spurs had 3 disallowed. To be fair, they're still offensively pretty impressive, but defensively very naive the way they went around the game last week. And if you go to Man City with 11 players out, including your 2 best centre-halves and your best player in James Maddison, and you try to go toe-to-toe with Manchester City, I wish you the very best of luck with that. If this is not the week for Postecoglou pragmatism, then they are about to get walloped into the distance by Manchester City. So look, I'm not picking Asian handicap here, but I'm just going to mention that if they do that, and I just feel like he's not going to, which is why I'm not tipping it. But if you see the team sheet this weekend and you see Tottenham are going to try and attack Man City, lump on a -2 or a -3 Asian handicap. City are going to wipe the floor with Tottenham because they are on a revenge mission too, considering, as you alluded to, the great record Spurs have got against Man City in recent years. I'm assuming Postecoglou is going to be sensible, and I picked out a couple of ways to make some money out of Man City. As usual, 1.3, it's not worth your time. This is another group bet for me. Take a group bet on 3-0, 3-1, or 3-2. That brings you a Tottenham goal. That brings you the usual Man City defensive aberration. That brings you plenty of Man City goals. That's 4. That is really good. That is really good. The scorelines are really likely. You get 2 get-outs. If you get 2 wrong, another one can still come in. So it's worth it. I also think a slightly more conservative, not as good odds, 1-0, 2-0, 2-1 at 3.5 is also really nice. And my gut is that Tottenham are going to score, but I do like victories to 0. And so Man City win to 0 is 2.5. That's a nice 3-0. If they're 2-0 down, are Tottenham really going to keep on attacking? If they do, there's every chance City go on to score 3, 4, or 5 without conceding. So don't discount the win to 0, but it's the 2 group bets I really, really like. But again, look for those teams to drop. If Postecoglou goes toe-to-toe with Guardiola with 11 players out, go for the Asian handicap.
All right, Johannes is going straight away for the Asian handicap, as you can see in the screen, -1.5 could be a good idea. And Felipe sees goals in this game, over 2.5 goals. Love those. Tom agree 100%. I don't understand. Really.
He says he loves those tips. He loves my tips.
All right.
Yes.
We do.
I think so anyway.
Well.
Unless there's something else to talk about.
Praise yourself, Tom. Praise yourself. Well, guys, this is it. This is the end of the road. But next week we have another Premier League show because we have midweek games. Before that, perhaps you want to know Tom's safe bet.
Safe bet this week. There's a few that we could do, but you've got to go with Arsenal. League leaders against a team that keep finding ways to lose in Wolverhampton Wanderers. So safe bet this week is Arsenal to win.
All right. Last week, Tom, you grabbed a double. I'm just checking. Villa and Arsenal to win. The odds were 5, which is great. Absolutely great. Show me the money.
Yeah, my confidence levels are up after last week, so I'm going to trebles from doubles last week. Slightly more conservative, though there's another game involved, because there's a few favourites this week, where last week there was just no favourites to be had. Arsenal, Newcastle, Brentford to win. That's Arsenal, Wolves, Newcastle, Man United, Brentford, Luton. Brentford are the team that bring you up to 4. It's a little bit more conservative than last week, but I think those 3 results very likely to come in for you.
Mm-hmm. Can we say that your level of confidence is higher than Onana's?
Yes, you can. It depends if I'm in midfield or in goal.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Enjoy Premier League. Bye-bye.